you have. There are so many projects and so many things that we're always doing. It's very difficult to put it all on a Facebook post or even list it on the site. So we're here tonight to talk about a couple of things. So on April the 4th, which is the city's regularly mandated charter election date, I always tell people that. We're not doing anything on a special election date. I don't believe in that stuff. I think we ought to do it when people expect to vote. There are 4 things on the ballot. You have an open mayor seat, which you have 3 candidates running for. We have one council seat that has an incumbent and another individual that's filed to run. And then we had 4 other council seats that one person filed to run for each one of them. So I think that's important. One of the things that I like to do is engage the folks, because I think that our electorate can sometimes become somewhat apathetic, and you've got 4 counselors that are going to be counseling, and 2 of which are incumbents, good people. I'm sure the 2 new ones are good people, but nobody ran against them. So it's one of those things that, hey, let's get you engaged. So those 2 elections are on the ballot. How many here remember the hospital sale trust from 1982? Okay, so the city of Claremore used to own the hospital. They sold the hospital in 1982. They set the money aside and said, we're going to use this. You can only use the interest. 2012, they changed that and said you can only use the interest for debt service. Great ideas. As you can imagine, the economy, the budgets have changed over the years. That money is not working very hard for us. So the original cost on that investment, $10,185,000. Somebody told me when I spoke with, you'll know that, of course, Bob Waters, Mr. Young, Dr. Young, and the lawyer, Bill, yeah. Brought them in when they heard about it. They were on the original and said they couldn't believe it sold for that. But on paper now, at the end of last year, we've lost a lot of purchasing power because the way it's invested, the way the trust is set up, the return is not great. So now that value on paper is down to about $9,300,000. And it only generated about $111,000 in interest last year. Well, that's not working very smart. We don't need the money for a capital project. We don't have the intention. But the way it was set up, the only way to dissolve that is through a vote of the people. We could put it in a checking account and make more than $100,000. So the intent of that is to turn around and use our fiscal policy, or our investment policy. Councilor Savage, welcome. And let the council reappropriate that into the general fund, and then we will sit down with Alan Brooks, who's our bond counsel, and a gentleman by the name of John Wolf, who does all of our municipal financing, and say, what's the best place to park this money to the best return? We spend about $5.5 million a year on debt service right now, so while $100,000 is a lot of money, it's really not in the big scheme of things, and our total operating budget's about $78 million. So we need that money to be working smarter for the taxpayers. So I want to preface that. That's on the ballot. If that doesn't change, now I will tell you the people that were here with the mayor, what was her name? Yes, that they looked at it and they said, you guys are right. This is something that Bill Flanagan caught about a year and a half ago in the middle of COVID when things slowed down. We were looking at a lot of different financial things. As we know, most of you know, mayor's had some health challenges. Kind of got put on the back burner. We're ready to do something with that and get that money working smarter for you. And then the 4th thing is what primarily we're here to talk about, is our Keeping Claremore Safe initiative, which is our 1 penny sales tax initiative that'll be on the ballot that you all will have a chance to vote on. So here's where we're at now. How does our money work in Claremore? State gets 4.5 cents, the county gets 1.83 cents, and the city of Claremore gets 3 cents sales tax rate. 1/3 of this penny goes away this summer. If you'll recall, there was a lawsuit years ago, material services, and the taxpayers voted we wanted to pay that back in the form of a sales tax. That's paying off 9 or 10 years early, saving millions of dollars in interest and penalties, but it still costs a lot more than it probably should have. But that'll go away. So regardless of what our initiative does, when that falls off, the total sales tax or global sales tax rate in Rogers County inside Claremore would be 9 cents. But this is what we get. So how do other entities work? You can see all the different things the state gets, you can see what the counties get. The deal was years ago, counties got property tax and a bit of state appropriation in their crib fund, county roads and bridges. Then all of a sudden somebody said, no, the Constitution allows you to get the sales tax game, and they did, and they haven't got out since. Whereas the Constitution says that this is all we get. Now, you look at schools, the majority of your property tax, by the way, it's always important. I spent almost 5 years working for Tulsa County, specifically the assessor's office, so I know very well how that works. About 75% of your property taxes go to public schools or career tech, some sort of education. So people go, oh, our property taxes are, the county gets about 10 mills in Rogers County. That happens to be just about 10%, and none of that money goes towards their roads. So city, county health departments, all that type of stuff. So we're down here with our sales tax. Oklahoma is the only state in the nation that requires its sole tax for operations to be sales tax, because it's very volatile. There are 17 other states that only have one type of tax that is eligible for operations, but it's property taxes. Anybody tell me the last time their property values actually went down or your property taxes went down? They just don't. And even in the bad years, 2008-9, when we had the economy, and even through COVID, 8-9, they flattened out, but they never went backwards. They didn't contract, and we haven't seen a decrease since. So most other states, everybody around us, their cities get both property tax and sales tax. And then Missouri's property tax, sales tax, and then Kansas City and St. Louis actually have local income taxes that they require there, which we will never do, and much to my surprise found out was already a law in Oklahoma that is technically right, but as I will tell you, I am not a proponent of that, and I know that all of us would get run out of town with the torches and pitchforks.
The city can't legally get ad valorem taxes either.
We cannot get property taxes for operations. We can pass a general obligation bond for a project-specific purpose to build something, a road. It goes on the backs of your property, and then it goes away. And so there's no operations. The city of Claremore has not passed a general obligation bond for anything since the 70s, as far back as I think about 73. We don't have anything prior to that. So I truly don't know the answer. The last time they passed a general obligation bond. So they do not get property taxes for operations. So, the history, 1969 was the first penny. It was called the alley. It's for streets and alleys. That's been changed over the years for infrastructure. So it's street, alleyways, water lines, sanitary sewer, water treatment plant, wastewater treatment plant, electricity, all those things. That was the first penny. 1972, the city said, hey, we want to have a great park system. We went out to the voters voted in a penny specifically for parks. Over time, now keep in mind the 1969 penny is now in perpetuity. It's been that way for a while, it doesn't go away. The 1972 penny was changed to where it went from all parks at some point, probably in the 90s. Yeah, and is what they did is, okay, we've got a great park system, there's a lot of money, more money coming in now. So they broke that up, and it goes 20% parks, 20% police, 20% fire, 40% capital needs. Laptops, cars, tractors, bulletproof vests, fire hoses.
It was 100% parks and recreation.
Originally, yes.
And then the city started carving it up.
At some point, and the voters decided, when they went it back, the voters decided, yes, that's how we want that 1 penny spent. The third penny came in 1995. Construction, operation, wastewater treatment plant upgrades, expo, recreation center. The important thing to note is those 3 pennies are what we call restricted. We cannot use them for anything else but what the voters said they have to be used for. The 1972 penny was just renewed, voted on in 2019. It went from a 6-year to a 10-year, so it took effect July 1 of 2020. So that one will come up to vote again in 2030, or to go into effect. The 1995 penny is currently due to expire in 2034, I believe. It was so again, operations, construction, all those things for those major facilities. So, Jim, you'll know, people go, what do we do before that? Well, for about 23 years, for longer than that, but in 1946, the city of Claremore started selling electricity. with this partnership with GRDA. They actually had a generation plant over on Awela, and they were selling electricity prior to that. The needs of the city grew more than what they could generate, and it just became, so when people ask, why do we have an electric utility? That's how we sold water and electric long before we ever had a sales tax dollar. So it's important to know that. So here's where we're at right now, so you know, when we talk about local tax. Now remember, we only get the 3 cents. So you can see where everybody else around us is somewhat comparable. I think the interesting thing to notice is that Verdigris, Pryor, and Foyle, because of the way state laws are written, if your population is a certain standpoint, there's a difference between shall and may, but those 3 communities don't even maintain their own streets. They don't even have road departments, so they don't have to, it's 2,500, the state says you shall, at 5,000 it says you may. So is what's interesting is, I spent 10 years almost working in that community right there. In 2013, we went out and asked the voters there, you want a half penny for police and fire. Now remember, a penny in Claremore, Oklahoma right now, we budget for it to be worth about 4.2, 4.3 million, 1 million. The last few years, it's been worth just under 5, so that's what we've collected. So for today's purposes, 1 penny is, we're gonna call it worth $5 million, okay? So when we did that, all of these communities were at 3. Vision 2025 expired, the Tulsa County didn't renew, all these other communities. So you can see, so it went from 3.5, then it went to 4, then it went to 4.05, and all these other communities have done the same thing. Skytook, I was at a GRDA meeting today, they're going out for a whole nother penny for locally. Because they've got some of the same challenges we do. They're an older community, they're growing, they have very aging infrastructure. They also have a public safety district where they can get some ad valorem dollars. We looked at that. The problem is when you carve out industrial and agricultural exemptions in Claremore, it nets you about $200,000. It's not worth the political capital, and we don't want to tack that onto your property taxes. So because that's people inside the city limits only. That's why. So it's important to know that's where we're at now. This is where the county, this is what it looks like with the state, county, and the city rates. Here we are right now. If this were to pass, and there's an asterisk here and here, if this were to pass, and when the counties falls off, we would be at 10. Foyle will go down to 10. They're at 10.33 now. And Skytook, with their global sales tax rate, they'll actually go up to 10.75. Okay.
You know what Tulsa is?
Tulsa right now, if you look at, so these are the Tulsa portions of those. They're about, it's like a 0.07 something. They're the Tulsa County. Okay. Their sales tax is right because they didn't renew the countywide vision, so it's a lower rate now. And they let all these individual communities go out and capture that local lot for themselves as opposed to trying to do regional projects. So I want to make sure that we're giving you all of the appropriate information. Nobody likes this number. And for years, the whole thing, you got to avoid a dime a dollar, you got to avoid it. Well, we've been saying that for 30 years. You can't get up there, and people are getting there out of necessity, unfortunately. So here's how this works. We factor on the economic development side of drive time for what we call Walmart. They say a 10-minute drive time, and I'm not factoring in stoplights and trains. We all know that. So they say a 10-minute drive time. This is what the retail folks use when they look at what our sales area is. About 108,000 people. Now we know, in talking to some of our larger retailers, they can run their point of sale purchase, what zip codes folks are coming from. We actually believe our retail trade area is closer between 150 and 200,000 people, because if you go due north and due east, we're it until you get to the point where you go, it might be closer to go to John. So a sales tax really makes sure that everybody that's using our infrastructure, our roads, the need for our police and fire, that everybody pays. It's not just the citizens that live in town. Now, while yes, it can be a regressive sales tax, if we put it all on just property taxes, it's only the people that are in town. And remember, we only have the one funding besides our utility revenue, which right now is about 55% of our revenue. So everybody goes, well, what do you do if you don't do this eventually? Because everybody's costs are going up, including ours. The only other alternative is for the council to start considering utility rate increases. Well, then we're only going after the people that, you know, the 12,000 utility customers. If we do this, we think right now, legitimately, conservatively, we think about 65% of our sales tax dollars come from people that live outside of the city limits.
Do you have any guarantee the county, if you talk to the county commissioners?
Yes, they're not gonna run their thirds.
Are they willing to put that in writing?
Well, I mean, they can put anything they want, doesn't mean anything.
Yeah,
If
yeah.
the new ones come in and decide to vote.
Yeah, well, my thing is, yeah.
They're not. I spoke with the people that benefit from taxes for, as far as funding, the county, our public schools, RSU, Sequoia. I talked to those folks before we ever did this, and we were having our conversations. This goes back 2.5 years ago. One of my first conversations with the council was, hey, we need to start thinking about how we grow with our growth.
What was your question? What did he ask?
He wanted to know if the commissioners could put something, what's the guarantee they won't ask for that 1/3 of a penny when it expires? I can tell you wholeheartedly that all three of them have said, we have no desire to go after it.
Well, can they not ask for more than a third?
They can ask for whatever they want. Their voters have to approve it.
Yeah, well-
Yeah. They can ask for anything they want. I'm pretty confident that our commissioners are wired as such that they're not going to.
You got good roads.
Yeah.
Could I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
If this does get extended, if it does extend, would that improve our streets? Because we do have a lot of potholes
Yeah,
out there right
absolutely.
now.
Rising
And this
tide
is
raises
nothing
all
against
ships.
you.
No,
Nothing
I mean,
against you.
yeah, we're gonna get to all that. We have a lot of deferred maintenance. I mean, I'm not here to sugarcoat it.
Okay.
We have 100-year-old water lines. We
Sure, I
have
understand.
decades of neglect on streets, power, and I talk about some of those things moving forward. Right now is what we do every year is the city sells its electricity and water and sanitary sewer. Now, it's important to know that water, sanitary sewer, our trash, our sanitation, solid waste collection, and our stormwater, those departments really don't cover their own costs. Everything's kind of subsidized. So we sell electricity to the tune, it's about a $30 million a year revenue. Now, keep in mind, at cost, that $30 million, we've got to take 17 to 18 million of it to buy that. So we're down to 12 or 13 million every year for decades, going back, because we've always been reliant on electrical revenue. We take 9.95, I don't know why they came up with that number, $10 million, and they transfer it to the general fund to help subsidize and pay for all the other things that we do. Remember, the sales tax funds are restricted. A penny's worth $5 million, we collect $15 million. Remember I said we had close to an $80 million operating budget? Sales tax doesn't cover it all. So we've got utilities, and then there's fees, fines, construction material, all the other things when people come and do business in town, or they get pulled over, all of those other things. So, but yes, because it's what this does. By the way, our police and fire budgets alone are about $13 million. So yeah. So the $10 million transfer is not specifically for them, it's to help across the board, but those don't even cover that. Yes, sir, you have your hand up?
Yes, sir. I got a question on this question, I don't know the answer. It appears to me that the way the city runs that electrical system, because what they buy it for, what they sell it for, is really a bad thing for the community. Because the profit margin, I mean, you've got almost $500,000 you're gaining off of late fees, reconnect fees, and it really hurts the public. It's because electric is so expensive in Claremore to provide those things. Why don't you take fire, this is a question, a budgetary question. Why don't you take the fire and PD off the top of your budget first, your taxes, like a lot of the cities do. Start there, and then start funding other city things going on after that. Because right now, you guys are putting the cart in front of the horse on your electrical issue. You're emphasizing so much money off the electrical to pay for fire and PD. Because that's the way it's budgeted right now, is that correct?
Well, it's not to pay for fire and PD. The electric help pays for everything across the board.
Well,
I'm confused by off the top.
Okay, you have your budget, and a lot of, you like your little circle and your little pies and stuff like that, you show on your budget. Like, the bottom line is, how much money does the city of Claremore make at the end of the year? Well, it does.
We don't, we have reserves because the law requires, but we're not a for-profit agency. We also bankroll and build for big capital projects. Like if we need to do a mile of roadway and 2 improved intersections, that could be $6 or $7 million. Well, the 1 penny that we have for that only funds 5, and we've got water and electric and all. So we have rolling amounts. We build up reserves because the law requires that we keep some reserves.
Yeah, at least 3 months.
Yeah, and we're in a very healthy point on that because we've got, right now, on the stuff that we all know we need to do, Blue Star, our substations, we got 4 of them. We overhauled one last year. I mean, we just went in and rebuilt it. We've got 3 more that we want to do. Our newest substation was put in the early 90s, and it was made, and we used a rebuilt transformer from the 70s. So the point being is, we also have to be prepared if a substation fails. That's a $10 or $12 million expense. So that's why we have reserves. That's why we have so there is no more money, regardless of where we fund police and fire or utilize electric. No one thing covers any one the total city's budget.
Okay, so but like say you said 1 penny right now would represent $5 million, or about $5 million.
Roughly, yes, sir.
Okay, $5 million. So right now, where does the fire and PD get its greatest money from?
Out of the out of the general fund. It's allocated through a budget process.
Right, but that comes from the electrical division, putting that into the general fund, is that correct?
It doesn't, no, sir. There's nothing that specifies that. There is not one thing other than the 20% of the 1 penny that specifically the law says has to go to police and
Oh,
fire.
no, forget the law. I'm just saying, but that's what you're doing with the profits from the electrical is going into general fund, and then there's going to fire and PD.
Okay, so let me clarify. The electrical sales do not generate a profit.
John,
Well, of course they don't. Because
They get
it-
40%.
Who gets 40%?
don't they split a penny sales tax now 40%, 40%, and 20%?
20, 20, 20, and 40. 20 police, 20 fire, 20 parks, 40% capital.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're getting sales tax dollars.
That's correct. Right, that's what I'm saying. That's the only
about $1 million.
allocated mandatory legal obligation.
Well, that's
The
kinda
rest of
confusing,
the
I was-
budget, sir, every other department, they submit a needs. We go through a budget process every year that goes to the budget. There's a finance committee comprised of the city council. It doesn't matter how we move them around. We only make, retain, or get revenue this much. So regardless of how, there's no way to take it from one thing and make it easier on everything else.
Well, yeah, because it sounds like but I'm not trying to sound not nice, but it almost sounds like you're living beyond your means, because like other cities are electric, they're not depending upon that, let's see, what do you pay for a GRD, 5 cents for a kilowatt?
Less than that.
And sell it for 13 or 14?
We sell it for 10,
You sell it for
10.67.
10?
Our kilowatt hour is 10.67 cents a kilowatt
And
hour.
then the service cost or the.
There's a customer charge
Customer charge on top
of
that.
$18 on a residential. The PCA, we get none of that.
Right, right.
None of that comes to
Yeah,
us.
that's correct,
Yep.
that's correct. But I'm saying is, if you budgeted the way it is right now, there's also too, I want to ask before I forget, those smart meters, aren't you guys paying like 9,500,000 or 800,000 to pay for those?
Yeah, it's about a $10 million total.
Yeah, $10 million, aren't those gonna be paid off in about, what, 2 or 3 years?
No, the contract goes through 2024. We didn't start paying them because they couldn't meet their contract requirements until 2018. So they're not paid off till 2018. But we didn't start paying, we got use of them in 2014, but we didn't start paying for them until 2018.
Oh, 4 years later?
Yeah, because they didn't meet a lot of the contract stipulations, and that price has been reduced significantly because they couldn't meet those. But I want to correct something you said earlier.
Yeah.
Any community that is a public power provider that is selling electricity, because I want to make something clear, not correct, but all of them are dependent on their sale of electricity, because they were doing that before they were in the sales tax game.
Yeah, but prior does too, a certain portion, but not.
Prior set up different. They have a public trust that's completely separate from the council. It doesn't matter how much money they make. They give the city $500,000 a year, and the rest of it they're putting back into their system and doing whatever with. So it's not apples to apples with
How
growth.
about Wausau, how does that work?
Owasso has PSO, a penny in Owasso is worth about $11 million, and they're not a utility provider for electric.
Why have they been so successful in the past, say, 10 or 15 years?
There's 45,000 people living there socially and economically. They're a more affluent community, and a penny there is worth more than 2 times what a penny is worth here.
Because of population
Yes, sir.
and income?
Volume and population.
I see.
Yeah.
Well, what about all this property, this commercial property, it's just sitting there for generations and decades?
Trust me, we try to find people to buy it all the time, the private sector.
Well, why can't you put some sort of small fee on them by not building that up and use a tiny little
That's illegal in the state of Oklahoma. They're very protective of people and their property rights in the state of Oklahoma. That's what I'm saying. Trust me, there's a lot of things that's basically me coming out and saying, you've got these 10 acres, you're not doing anything with it, we're gonna charge you. That's wrong. In my opinion, that's charging somebody for there's no difference in that and me coming out and saying, the city doesn't like the color of your house, paint it. We shouldn't be doing that either.
Like this property over here by Lowe's, this pristine commercial property over here, nothing's getting done, it's all sitting around, waiting around for its value to go up.
Yeah, well, there's a bank that owns it, so there have been 3 additional lots that have sold, plans are sitting, so it's starting to develop. People are buying off chunks of it now. Yeah, it's starting to happen. The commercial growth here is, on the retail side, is picking up.
Retail's dead everywhere. I mean,
When they first did that in 2008, they were gonna do a power center, that's all changed. Now, granted, neither I were here, Councilor Savage wasn't on the, we would have never gone into that endeavor the way the city did back then. Nobody that did that is involved now. They fronted a bunch of money for infrastructure. We wouldn't do that now. It was a bad decision.
How about the internet sales? How much you're making on that now?
None. Oh, you mean, yes, excise, use tax.
Use them.
Now, because there was a 2018 SCOTUS verdict, so last year, our use tax was about 1.4 million.
Where does that go? Just in the general fund?
That goes into the general fund. It's not a restricted, it goes into the general fund and is part of our, here's how we pay for everything. Yeah. And before that, it was next to nothing, because you remember it was self-reporting when you filed your income taxes. Yeah, now the online retailers are required to remit it to the state. Everything in Oklahoma, regardless of where it's sold, goes to the state first, and then the state sends it out to the cities and towns and the counties.
Thank you.
Yep. So, why do we feel this is needed? We are a growing community. That comes with growing public safety needs. Rogers County is the 6th fastest growing county out of 77. We used to be the 2nd. We are not 6th because we're contracting or slowing down. We're 6th because a lot of the major metro areas, the 2 major metro areas, they have communities that have a foot in multiple counties. So Jinx is in Tulsa County and Creek County. Broken Arrow is in Tulsa County and Wagner County. You get down to Oklahoma City, Edmond is in Oklahoma County and Logan County. They're having significant growth because of reinvestment, retail, so they're having more building permits. So Tulsa, Oklahoma County, while they're about the same, you're seeing other counties like Creek, Logan, Wagner, Osage counties start to do what we were doing up until all this retail boom in those areas. And yeah, retail's dead in the sense of power centers, Mr. Smith, but there's still a lot of retail development coming.
The problem too, we can't extend our city limits.
Well, we can't go south, you're right.
We can't go south, we can't go north.
We can go north to Seguia.
West is all you got.
West, well, we go north to Seguia, we go west to the river, the fence line, and we go east to the Rogers-Mays County line.
So Claremore is like 12.2 square miles.
We're about 13, chief. Yeah, it's 11 or 12, yeah, it's somewhere there, yes.
So it's not very big.
That's correct. Now, as people come in and say, hey, we want to develop a new neighborhood, we're going to build 300 single-family homes, and you've got sanitary sewer out there, like going out east on Highway 20, or with this new Highway 20 realignment on the other side of town, we foresee and know there's going to be a lot of those 3rd and 4th generation big landowners, sir, that you mentioned that have been sitting on property. 3rd and 4th generation people aren't raising cattle and baling hay. They're seeing dollar signs. They're going to sell to developers. We're going to see residential
We've got the
growth.
duplex market cornered.
Well, that's changed now with the, there's a lot of that, but we've changed a lot of that with our pattern zone and uniform development code. But as we grow, those developers can say, hey, we want to be on a sewer line. We don't want to have a septic or aerobic, or we want to have access to your police and fire. So as they build those neighborhoods, they'll request to annex in.
How far north can you go?
About Seguia, just a mile or two south of the lake.
Seguia or
Is that
Sequoia?
400?
I'd lie to you if I told you. I know I could look at it on a map, but north of Sequoia High School, and I mean, it's a pretty good chunk we can go north.
Like, you guys own that property out there by the old landfill?
The old landfill, yes.
So you go up around that area?
Yeah, that's already in the city limits. Yes, sir. The fence line does go north of that.
Isn't it Lowry? Well, your electric.
No. There's a fence line, and then there's the city limits. Our city limits are like this. Our fence line is like this.
Yeah, because your electric goes all the way up to the way.
Our electric goes way north, it goes way east. Yeah, our electric extends, but we might have a circuit that has 2,500 meters on it, and it may be 3 blocks or a mile, and then we may have a circuit that's 6 miles long and only has 30 meters on it because those more rural areas. So we're growing, we haven't contracted, we haven't stopped. There's some other awesome retail announcements coming soon. There's also some great industrial and job sector growth announcements coming soon. We're excited about that. So just what we did last year. Yeah, oh yes ma'am.
I had a question.
Yeah.
As far as the 6% growth, has anybody done any research to see how many of those people are actually working within the county, or how many of them are commuting outside of the county?
I'm sure they have. I have.
Okay.
Now,
Just
I can
curious.
tell you that because of certain areas of Rogers County, the median home value and median household income has drastically gone up.
Mm-hmm.
But we all know what's east or west of us, and so that
Mm-hmm.
affects things. Now, traditionally, in Claremore proper, there is we know a factor of expense to spending ratio, and I've got some of that on here, but I don't know. We're trying to work with the county commissioners to always make sure that this is the place. Now, here's what we do know. The growth that's coming at the port, and I'll tell you this, the growth that's coming out of the port, the potential out of Mid-America, there's really not a lot of places in Catoosa to live, and frankly, if they land a major project in Pryor, those folks are gonna live in Rogers County. There's just not a lot to do out there. Where they're gonna live in northeast Broken Arrow, they're gonna have quick access to roads, and they wanna be somewhere in 20 minutes as opposed to 45 minutes. Interestingly enough, I reported last night at the council, we get a monthly report on single-family startups and permits. Tulsa's always up there. So the city of Tulsa had 99 new housing starts in the month of January, so January to February. Followed behind that, second was Wagner County at 45. Claremore proper was at 43, and when you incorporate Rogers County with Claremore, the total was 71. So we are seeing that residential growth. Those people are coming here. We're getting more housing. And we think from what our housing study that we're updating with CETA is that we're starting to see that's going to be the trend because people want to get out of Tulsa Public Schools. Owasso's just growing fast on the housing side, and the property is so expensive too. I mean, the lot price difference is ridiculous over there to here too.
How does that compare with the influx of people who are in multifamily housing units, duplexes and things like that? Is a duplex considered single-family
No, the
housing by
duplex is
county
considered
standards?
multifamily.
Okay.
And there's duplexes, quadplexes, all that stuff, and
Right.
we've done some fairly intentional stuff over the last few years to change where duplexes and those types of houses can go. We've changed the aesthetics, the architectural requirements on some of that stuff to preserve some of the original part of town, some of the stuff along Will Rogers corridor. Yes, sir.
John, in the population, like within 5 miles of Claremore, about 30,000.
Yeah, our population right now is just under 20. We're at 20,000 in the city.
So, yeah,
But if you look at the 10-minute drive, I don't know, depending on, the 10-minute drive from Walmart
Yeah.
is that 108,000 people. Now you got to remember, you can go for quite a way in 10 minutes, and they're doing it as a bird flies. I mean, I can be in Owasso in 10 minutes, and I've got several high-speed driving awards from our friends at both Rogers County and the state to show that. So I try not to.
Lost money, doesn't it?
Yeah. So with that growth comes a need to increase our public safety. Now, in full transparency, we would definitely benefit from a general fund penny, one that is not restricted. I'm no fool. We're not gonna be able to go out and just say, we need you to give us a penny to do whatever you want with. As much as we'd all like that, and that's frankly what we need, it's just not gonna happen. Now, this is what Claremore Fire dealt with in calendar year 2022. Chief Douglas is here with his two wonderful boys and his wife Megan. So, 1,884 incidents we responded to. We had an average response time of 3 minutes and 46 seconds. You can see 30 residential fires, 10 commercial fires, 66 other. That could be a grass fire, that could be somebody flipped a cigarette, whatever. There could be a number of those. That number used to be considerably higher. We changed our protocols during COVID because, you know, it was like, hey, we used to go, hey, I need to go to the store, but I can't get out of my chair to get in my car, and we're nice people. It's not an emergency. So now this is emergencies. This is grandma fell down, little Timmy slipped in the pool, somebody fell off a roof, whatever that might be. So that shows you where we're at now, and that's going up annually. These are the ones that really get me. This is how many calls for service our police department went to last year. Does not include the 3,750 traffic stops, the accidents, the animal control calls, and that one scares me, and we'll talk a little bit about it. This fiscal year that we're in right now, that started July 1, we finally added 2 police officers for the first time. We only had going back to 2000, but from the year 2000 till the start of this fiscal year, our call volume increase went by 27%, and we didn't add any police
How many
officers.
police officers we have?
We now have 38, and then the chief and deputy chief.
So we have 42 firemen,
44 contractual firefighters.
and they're making twice the calls the police are.
The national safety standards and the FBI, all the data, now they say you need 2.1 peace officers for every 1,000 people. Do we need 60 police officers? I don't think so right now, but that's what the national standards are. You know, that's always very subjective. It's not too objective, it's very subjective. So I'm not sitting here saying we need to go hire 20 more police or 30 more police. I am not saying that. I'm just saying they have a national standard we have to gauge everything against. That's the number. So these are what scare me. We've got 2 SROs, school resource officers. Claremore Public Schools graciously helps us pay for one of them. We have 7 campuses. We have 4 elementaries, a junior high, a high school, and what they call AI, the Alternative Center. It is not a question of if, it is a question of when that bad thing happens, that none of us think will ever happen. Right now, we confiscate drugs, knives, guns, you name it, kids have access to it. We're seeing it.
Does the city pay for the school officers or the schools?
The CPS helps us pay for one. We cover the balance of that, or basically half, and then the other one wholly.
So, wait a minute, CPS, they
Claremore
pay-
Public Schools,
Yeah.
they pay $65,000 a year.
Okay, and how many do you have? You have 6?
I have 2.
I thought you had 6 campuses or something.
No, 7 campuses, 2 school resource officers. Yeah.
Where
Yes,
are the
yes, ma'am.
where are the current ones? Are they at the high school and junior high?
Yeah,
or
one handles the junior high and the high school, and if there's an issue at the AI, another one handles all 4 of the elementary schools. There's about 500 kids in each of our elementary schools. And these encounters, malnourishment, abuse, sexual abuse, neglect, it's terrible, terrible, heartbreaking stuff. And I've got more data that we'll get into, but I'm just telling you, we're not immune to the things that you see about on the news and the horrific things that happen on TV and movies. It's going on here. Our police investigators are dealing with it. We're dealing with families. We're dealing with children that are exposed to things that they should never be exposed to. And I tried to read one line on one report, and I got so sick, I just had to stop. It's happening, folks. Trafficking, drugs, it all happens everywhere. So, then we'll get into some of that. Yes, sir, you had a question?
2 things. At Rogers County Bank, you got one of your police officers that stays there during the day.
He's there on his own time, and he's paid by them directly.
That's what I was wondering, does the
Yeah,
city
no.
get reimbursed for
No,
that?
sir. He's paid directly, other than the vehicle presence. We use a system called roll call.
Ooh,
So
right.
any of our officers that want to work overtime, They have to go through that, it's set up, they're paid directly through that. We do recapture a little bit for fuel, but those, the entities that have that security pay for that themselves.
Last week, you're talking about these school things, my neighbor was telling me, through TikTok, they're showing kids how to, how do I want to say this? Stage a incident where they get the parents in trouble.
Yeah,
And they're learning that from TikTok.
it's crazy.
They learn that damage themselves, and then the parents go through the system.
I had the opportunity to go listen to, Mayor Flanagan and I did it about a year and a half or so ago, had the opportunity to listen to a lady that had retired from the CIA, counterintelligence, brilliant. She spent, Asia was her primary source, China, and she had some Middle East, she was brilliant. And they plucked her out of the Marine Corps in the late 70s because her scoring and took her to Langley. Langley CIA. Anyway, that being said, she opened up, said, welcome, thanks for having me. Right now, everybody raise a hand if you have TikTok on your phone. And this is a room of about 800 people, and I'd say half of them, I don't have it, I don't use it. About half of them raise their hand, and she said, delete it now, get it off your children's phone. It is absolutely Chinese data mining. And she goes, I'm not some crazy, no. It is data mining. They are using this to manipulate and dictate. It's social engineering. And I was like, you got to believe that lady. So yeah, and all sorts of things. They're teaching kids, and they have these TikTok challenges. They're doing stuff it's crazy, and it's going to get somebody. It has gotten people killed.
The sad thing is, the parents can stop.
Oh yeah.
Off the top of your head, the salaries for the police department and the fire department, and you know, Penny is like 4.2 million to 5 million.
Mm-hmm.
What is the salaries of our fire department a year?
This current year with budgeted overtime, regular pay, roll-ups, all that
Not
stuff.
counting healthcare and all that.
Yeah, not counting that. I want to say, and it's on the website. I think fire is 3.8 or 4.2, and police is 3.8. It's a little lower.
Million.
Yeah, million. Yes, sir. Yeah.
Gee.
It's the majority of their budget is personal services.
Yeah. And the police?
About the same. One of them is about 4, and the other one's 3.8. The police is a little less.
Yeah.
This current year, the police's budget looks inflated because we parked $1 million of CARES grant funding for the new firing range in their budget. It's one-time money.
How does that compare with prior?
I haven't run those numbers, but I can tell you it just depends on. They don't have as many police officers as we do.
Fire has a volunteer fire department.
Yeah.
It's cheaper, I guess.
State laws alleviate or prevent communities to going back to that now. But again, things we don't do.
Good union.
So, that being said, closing the gap, what does this do if it were passed? These are the things: decrease response time, lower ISO ratings. ISO ratings are important if you own big buildings or industrial complex. It affects your insurance rates, okay? Homeowners, not so much. Increased staffing levels. We will have to build a 4th fire station. There is absolutely no doubt about that, especially as we grow with the residential and the commercial retail south on 66 and on the east side, or the west side. Now that we've got sewer over there, we already actually own the property where a 4th fire station would go. It was acquired when we did all that country club, South Haven stuff here. So we actually have the land for that. Eventually, we will need to build that. To go back to part of your question, Mr. Smith, here's the way, because police officers start down here, they finish up here, firefighters the same way. If you were to take a public safety, and please don't take it, this is what they make, but if you take all of them and average that out across a year, when you pay for their salaries, their health insurance benefits, training, cars, uniforms, all the things that we have to do, you can almost say that every single public safety employee averages about, it costs the taxpayers about $100,000 a year. So
Cars.
that's it, yeah, that's everything. So think about, when you build a 4th police station, frankly, the cheapest part of it is $10 million to build the building, the $5 million to buy the ladder trucks, the engine trucks, the overland fire trucks, and all the bells and whistles. The expensive part is the 15 or 16 people you gotta hire to staff it at $1.6–2 million a year, forever expenses.
That's
Yes, sir.
fire station, you said police station.
Fire station, I apologize. So those ongoing expenses are really the ones
The firemen are making north of 70,000 a year,
Well, it depends, not all of them, no.
average. I mean, if it's 40,
Well, I mean,
44
what they
and
make,
48,
I've got all the data, but I mean, we start them around
seems like a-
44, 45, I think is what they come in at.
and they work Kelly shifts, and the police work regular shifts.
Yeah, the police have some minimum staffing, so, and Chief Douglas is here, he can tell you everything you wanna know about firefighters and how, so yeah, we have an A, B, and C shift, so typical 24 on, 48 off. Yeah. Police, we have day shift, evening shift, overnight shift, so we typically like to have like 6 or 5, and 7, but you know, vacations, people get injured, they're at grandma's birthday party out of town. We rarely ever have
Yeah.
full staffing. We have minimum staffing, but full staffing's rarely on any one given shift. And this will come as no surprise, our busy time in law enforcement is late at night. So-
And y'all don't, give the ambulance service any funding at all, do you?
No, sir.
How in the world have y'all managed to keep that going?
It's privatized. Pafford, and then and there's some talk out there by some other folks, a couple of commissioners. They've been kicking around a countywide EMS service, but it's just,
They have a franchise, I assume, to be the only one in town?
well, I mean, you can call an ambulance, depending
I
on how
think you
busy
wanted
they
money.
are. We don't have, Sean, I don't wanna,
No, that's fine.
Sean's on those boards
Yeah.
too,
So
so.
the ambulance is licensed through the city. I don't think there's anything that's a non-compete, it's just they don't know, nobody else is licensed. There might be something associated with dispatch.
We don't have an annual
See, I used to
or
own the
franchise
ambulance
agreement.
service. We had the funeral
That's
homes.
back
had
when you were
ambulance.
picking up bodies and sick
Yeah,
people.
let me tell you what.
In a
the
horse-drawn
firemen
carriage,
wanted it.
Jim, no.
The firemen kept it for 2 years, and they decided they didn't want it.
Yeah, it's.
They did not want
So
the ambulance
typically, because Pafford has such a presence here, they'll show up. You might see a Mercy ambulance. You might see a City of Owasso
The
ambulance.
best year I ever had in the ambulance business was 13,000. That was my best year.
Yeah. Rec centers and expo centers have a tendency to do
Same
the
thing.
same thing, those quality of life things. So those are the things we're talking about, those bigger expenses. Closing the gap with police, obviously maintain low crime. We've got to be more proactive. The big concern, and I've got numbers, is we're not doing a lot of, hey, we know there's a house that's full of bad people doing bad things. We don't have the resources of people to sit on something and build a case. We're so busy being reactive to all of the different things we're exposed to right now that keeping us from becoming a community that's got all those bad things all the time on the news is very difficult for us. If we don't do something somehow, regardless of how we do it, we're going to become a crime recording agency. We're just going to record crimes, because I'm telling you right now, if you call me tomorrow and Counselor Savage says a car got broken into in the driveway, we're going to come out and take a report, make a list of stuff, here's turn into your insurance company. There is nobody out looking for those people. We don't have the time to go chase those folks down. We don't have the ability to do that right now. And it's unfortunate.
Has the increased immigration caused more of a problem?
Not so much here. And I don't want to say, there are things that go on in certain industries in the county that attract a certain type of worker.
Oh, yeah.
And so, you know, regardless of where you are at on even today's vote, there is a lot of indentured servitude in these grows, especially when they're foreign owned, because they get people here and they hold them up, they don't have where to go.
Yeah.
And they don't have the resource to go anywhere. So what do? They break rules, they break laws. And we're going to talk about some of the the number of people that we're dealing with. I've got crime stat, that's my slide holder that would typically be. So I've got all sorts of stuff for you. I just think it's important that you know. I'm getting to the point where these are all right off the top of my head. However, interestingly enough, this 2/3 of the people, and this is according to Scott Walton and John Sappington, about 67% of the people in the Rogers County Jail right now are not from here. They're from Tulsa, or they're from other areas. They're not from Rogers County, they're not from Claremore. We've got data, we started tracking about 2015 to present. Right at 50% of the people that our law enforcement officers, Claremore PD, not ROCO, 50% of the people that we arrest have a zip code somewhere other than Claremore, Oklahoma.
We don't arrest the Claremore
But they-
people. I mean, that's
They
just.
did the crime here.
Absolutely, yeah, they were arrested here because they did the crime. So that goes to show you, with growth, and when you become a destination place for whatever it is, There's also people that think, oh, we're just gonna go up to Rogers County and do it. Well, there's another thing coming. We got a pretty proactive sheriff. We don't have the capabilities that we need to continue to keep those numbers down. That's a big part of this. So, I think that's important for you all to know, because people always ask. Got a ton of crime statistics here, but the thing that I really want to talk about is active investigations. We have the need to have hundreds of active investigations. Right now, through the end of January, I apologize, it's not updated through February, we had about 110 active investigations. Auto theft at 1, burglary 6, deaths 6, fraud 9, general investigation 9, missing in persons, runaway, property crimes, robbery, violent crimes 15, all other investigations 6. That could be, there's so many different things. I mean, you might not be surprised, but you'd be surprised at some of the calls we respond to. But the things that really concern me is that 46 sex crimes, most of which involve a minor. Okay, and we got 5 investigators, and there's one specifically that's kind of there, and I mean, you can imagine having to deal with that all the time. The thing that really scares me, though, proactive investigations, the things that we're intentionally trying to keep something from happening because we got a tip that something. We have 4, and when I talked to the chief and the deputy chief, they're like, yeah, but we just the time required and the amount of manpower to invest in those things, we just don't have it right now. So, do you have a question?
Yeah, I got a question.
Yeah.
Can the city get any money from the Cherokee Nation, because of McGirt?
Because we don't, because we fall under the Curtis Act, which a judge reads. We have a great relationship with the Cherokee Nation. We've never had a conversation with them. When we arrest somebody in the city of Claremore, if they've done a crime, we don't care what they look like or who they are. Under what the law has said and what we believe and the appellate courts held up, we fall under the Curtis Act because we are incorporated pre-statehood. So we don't get, yeah.
You don't have to get
and we're also we have a great relationship with Rogers County. The sheriff's office, even though they could, and you read about this for years in Tulsa, they don't charge the communities around here to hold our prisoners. We don't have a jail.
Yeah.
We have a room that we put people in until they go to the jail. We don't have a jail.
Yeah.
So, but the answer is no, we do not.
They get compensated. The county gets compensated for the prisoners too.
The county gets compensation they have a deal with the Cherokee Nation.
Yeah.
We do not.
Yeah.
We do not compensate the county.
Yeah.
They don't charge us.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, so,
I didn't know.
so there's a lot of crime
Well, yeah,
stats
it'd be
there. But here's some things, people are like, how does this affect you individually? How does it affect an individual? So the national average say that you spend about 30% of your gross income on taxable goods. So, and I'm gonna give you the numbers. So right now, if you were to go out and you made $25,000 a year in Claremore, Oklahoma, the national average says you spend about $7,500 on taxable. You're going out to eat, you're buying groceries, you're buying basketballs, footballs for your kids, whatever you're doing. Right now, that costs you in sales tax at the current rate, holistically, the county, the city, and the state, $699.95. If this were to pass, it will go up to $750. So it's a $50 over the year. If you make $65,000, you can see right now you'd be paying about $1,820 in sales tax.
You're not eating.
It goes up $131. And if you make $95,000, you probably don't care that it goes up $191 in taxable goods, but that's how much it goes up. Yes, sir.
Why do we have sales tax on our electric bills? On our electric bill, there's a sales tax.
Mm-hmm.
Why? It's a service.
25% of the economy in Oklahoma, when they enacted our current tax system, which by the way is antiquated. I don't want to,
Yeah.
The state of Oklahoma's tax system is very antiquated, they realize it. When they put that together in 1933, I think is when they formed the tax commission, 75% of our economy was based on the sale of goods. 25% was services. It's almost an exact flip now. 25% of it is goods,